Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 82, Breaking Out of Your Burnout.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Small Biz Life. We're so glad you are with us this week. My name is Kristen Ingram.
And I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And we are a husband and wife team, not psychologists.
No.
I'm a CPA.
And I am, what am I anymore? I have a background in information technology. I guess I'm the Chief Business Systems Officer of Ingram Digital Media now.
And the chief researcher at this point.
Yes.
Yeah. So Jeff came to work for Ingram Digital Media, which is the company that owns Small Biz Life, at the beginning of March. And so he's full-time with us now, which is pretty awesome.
Woohoo.
And our goal is to help you walk through this journey that we call the Small Biz Life, because we know that owning a small business is not a 9-to-5.
No.
And we're here to help you cut all the crap out of your business so that you're really focusing on what's important.
Yeah. And that's really too, because we believe people need to dream and they need to dream big. But to get to your dream, and you have to start cutting out the stuff that isn't part of that dream.
Right.
And it's not cut it out of your life because it maybe probably needs to happen. But what are good ways to get rid of it?
Exactly. So, and one of the things that you need to focus on is you. That is incredibly important. And I think as small business owners, a lot of times we forget to focus on ourselves, especially when we're going through burnout.
Yes. And I want to say, doing research for this episode, and I do a lot of research on a lot of things. And, it's one of those things where I didn't realize I was probably trapped in the cycle myself for years. I think I don't know if this is just a man thing, but it's like you have this built-in need to serve your family, to provide for your family. And in a way, you can make that overrule your life to such a degree to where you can get trapped into these phases easy. Because the problem is you push away the other things that you need to be doing to focus on what you think you have to do. And you're not really moving yourself forward, and you end up getting trapped. I think this probably happens for women too. Yeah,
I think a lot of women experience this because they have to take care of the family. The family has to be above everything else, including themselves, including their business. And burnout is real.
Oh, yes.
And happens to everyone. I know I've gotten stuck in this cycle. You were stuck in the cycle. It happens to everybody at some point. But the key is to identify when you feel burnout coming up. And we're going to kind of teach you things that you can look for both physically and mentally. And then kind of acknowledging where you are in that process so that you can break out from it. And, one of the things that's interesting, we always do research even on like terminology that we're going to use. And the word breakout, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, is to develop or emerge with suddenness or force.
And that's really the truth, because it's like I started accidentally coming out of my probably long-term burnout. And at first, it sort of said, and then, oh wait, I guess I've been burned out, and I kind of stayed sort of like wobbly kind of there, and then all of a sudden, when I really got through it, it just boom.
Yeah, and it's funny because I know a lot of people in Small Biz HQ have commented on the change in your attitude and how much different you are and how much happier you seem. I've gotten emails from listeners saying that they can tell the difference in you, people who know us.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we were driving home last night and I was like, I didn't realize how much I missed you. Because I didn't realize how much you had changed while you were burnt out until I got you back.
Yeah, because, these are slow incremental things. So the thing is, if we're aware and can pay attention to when they're starting, we can then figure out a way to work through it. So, but before we really get into the meat, there's a couple things we have to talk about, which is one, what are some of these physical symptoms that might let you know that you're in burnout?
Okay, so this is actually from the psychology department at UCLA. Remember, we're not psychologists, right?
No.
But we like doing a lot of research.
We like doing a lot of research. And part of this is a hypothesis on our part, but it appears from studies like this that there's some validity maybe.
Right. So, according to UCLA, there are 3 stages of burnout physically, okay? And the first stage is called stress arousal. And this includes any 2 of the following symptoms. And you could have more. Persistent irritability, and that's if you're in that position where you kind of get triggered really easily. You kind of find that you kind of snap at people. Okay.
Jeff had that one. Yeah.
Persistent anxiety. Periods of high blood pressure. You had that. Not super high, but when you broke out, your blood pressure went down quite a bit.
Yeah.
Grinding your teeth at night.
I definitely did that.
Insomnia.
I had periods of that.
Forgetfulness.
What?
Yeah. I think we're still having issues
We're still
with
having
that.
issues with the forgetfulness.
I think that's more the ADD.
Yeah.
Heart palpitations or unusual heart rhythms, the inability to concentrate. Oh, did you have that one? And headaches. Okay, so that's the first stage.
And once again, these are symptoms that the psychologist found. These symptoms show up in other things too. So just because you have headaches does not mean it's due to burnout. So don't get trapped into that thought process, but keep it in mind and think about the overall idea of what burnout is. And then consider if maybe you're there or maybe you spend some time there on and off throughout your workday or your family life.
Right. And don't think you have to write all these down. We kind of want you to be thinking about this as you listen. But if you go to smallbizlife.com, click on podcasts, you can go, this link will be in the show notes. Yeah. Okay, the second stage is energy conservation. Okay, so this is when your body starts to decide okay, we're getting stressed out, right? We're starting to get tired. So we are going to pull back. Okay, and it's interesting because your body and your mind will automatically start to do these things to protect you, okay, from burning out. So some of the things are lateness.
Nah, never had that issue.
Procrastination.
We'll get to that later.
Needed 3-day weekends.
Yeah.
Okay.
I in full disclosure here, my last several years at my job, I had reworked to have permanent 3-day weekends.
Yep. Decreased sexual desire.
You better hope not, woman.
That was never an issue. Turning work in late, persistent tiredness in the mornings, social withdrawal. And I see a lot of small business owners that do this.
Yeah.
They pull away from their family and their friends because they have to work.
And later on, when we get to the stages, you're going to see that one maybe pop up again.
Cynical attitudes.
Stupid.
Resentfulness. Increased caffeine consumption or increased alcohol consumption. And apathy.
Whatever.
You want to kind of explain what apathy is for people?
Apathy is really, it's the opposite of empathy. So it's sort of like you just have this lack of feelings towards the world. It's just like, you don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, I'm sorry I was late. I have stuff to do.
Right. That's apathy. It's kind of when you stop caring. Okay. And then the third stage, so stage 2 is trying to prevent you from going to stage 3, but stage 3 is exhaustion. And this is when you are mentally and physically starting to shut down.
This is what we think of as burnout. So stage 1 and stage 2, you are on your path to exhaustion.
Right. So chronic sadness or depression, chronic stomach or bowel problems, chronic mental and physical fatigue, chronic headaches, desire to drop out of society, the desire to move away from friends, work, or perhaps even family. And then the worst part, perhaps the desire to commit suicide.
So, I mean, it kind of looks like, and this is drawing a huge conclusion, and once again, I'm not a psychologist, but like once you get into that final stage, it kind of sounds like depression, right? And so it might not exactly be depression like on a chemical level, but I mean, very similar types of symptoms to when you see those chronic depression type of scenarios.
Right. And that's the first one they list is chronic sadness and depression. You know, so I mean, this is really when you are in full-fledged
burnout,
emergency kind of burnout. And so, you know, I want you to think about, are you experiencing any of these things right now? And if you are in stage 3, I would highly recommend that you go see a medical professional.
And it definitely would not hurt if you're in any of these stages and you don't know how to break out. There is no shame in doing this. There really isn't, because your life will change if you can break out of the cycles. Because part of it is once you start getting these mental barriers, it's very hard to progress in your life. And we don't want that for any of our listeners. We don't want that for any people who don't listen to the show. You know, these aren't good places to be.
Right. And in full disclosure, both of us at some point during our lives have seen mental health professionals. And it was tremendously helpful.
And once again, you know, if you're not comfortable going there, I know there are many religious people who go to their spiritual leaders who are often have training and go through ways also to help in this thing. So it doesn't, you know, or maybe you just have that really empathetic friend who has a way of listening, and that helps. Whatever works for you, and maybe start one of them and try and find another one. But, you know, these are not places to be stuck in your life, because you're not only not dreaming, you know, you're on the verge of just not doing anything. And that's just not healthy. Right. I mean, that's unliving life, and you don't want to unlive life.
Right. That's the thing. Find someone who you trust, who is not going to judge you, and go have a talk with them.
Yeah.
Okay. Very important. Very important. So let's talk about some of the things that you may be saying and you don't even realize it. And I notice that the more work that we're doing with psychology, I'm kind of going back through the last 15 years of my career, and I'm much more tuned in when I talk to people now.
Yeah. And
I'm looking for these things.
Yeah, and then we're starting to see patterns, and sometimes people weren't always there, but you know, at times of their career they were there. You know, maybe they're there now, and we're worried for the people who we've met who are there now. But I mean, these are all things that we've kind of seen over and over again, and very common saying. So if your brain uses these words, always question yourself. I like to say I'm a skeptic, but I'm not only a skeptic of outside sources, I'm a skeptic of me, because I am the most effective liar to myself.
Well, because you're a fantasy writer.
That's right. I'm a fiction writer. I lie.
So it's kind of interesting, because the group of folks that we have in Small Biz HQ, and if you're not familiar with that, that's our monthly membership site. Like, we've been spending so much time interacting with them, and they are such a positive group and such a dreaming group. Even the people who don't think they're dreamers, they're still dreamers.
I'm looking at you all right now. Well, I mean, not physically, but through the microphone.
Right. So it's interesting, because when I leave that circle, and even like the small, you know, even our free group, the Small Biz Life community, those people that interact on a regular basis, for the most part are very positive. They may be struggling with things, but they keep pushing forward.
Yeah. And the big thing to remember is, once again, these things everyone say at certain times. Mm-hmm. Everyone has doubts. Everyone has things to do. And one of the big things that we've been going through in HQ this month, and the reason we've been doing it, is to try and train ourselves to react different.
Right. So we're doing a lot with mindset, with physiology, to try to help you get to the next level. Yeah. So, if you're interested in, checking out Small Biz HQ, go to smallbizlife.com, click on the Small Biz HQ button, and you can check out what we're doing there. Yeah. But as I'm interacting with people who are outside of our tribe, I'm seeing this more and more, and I'm seeing why they're not making the progress that they want. Yeah. So, a couple things that I'm hearing people say, and this is typically when I work with clients, I'm trying to get into the nitty-gritty of why they're not making the progress they want. And a lot of times, I ask a lot of questions and I give suggestions. And for the business owners who are not making it where they want to go, or the ones that I see are in burnout, typically they say, I can't, I won't, I shouldn't, I don't, or they blame other people. So, for example, if you don't really have a lot of marketing budget, so I might suggest, hey, why, you can do a lot with social media. Oh, well, I don't do that. I don't want to do that. Oh, well, my business partner won't do that. And there's always excuses for why things can't be done. Whereas what I typically find with, the business owners that are in HQ, or even the business owners that are in our group,
I can't get this to work, but I need to find a way to make this work.
Right. They're like, I don't know how to make that work, but I'm going to figure it out. And then we'll kind of work through that. But they're open to the suggestion. Whereas a lot of people who are in burnout or heading towards burnout have decided that this is how they are. This is how their business is.
And they've lumped in and hardened in their belief of the people around them to be the way they are in their interactions. So there's no possible way, we have 13 partners in this business and none of us network. That's just not what we do. Well, you're in trouble.
Right.
And your business will be growing in trouble if you don't network.
Right. And that's a big one. I'm always like, you have to network. I can't network. Okay, why not? Because I'm an introvert. Okay, well, it's interesting because there is actually neuroscience now that has proven that our personality is not static. So they used to think that like pretty much whoever you were at 14, that your personality was stuck. And that is no longer the case. So...
And I want to point out one other thing too, because we also think that because we're introverts, we can't perform as an extrovert. So I just did a quick Google search. Here are some famous introverts, and people you might know who are highly successful and have done things like this. Let's say Steven Spielberg. I'm pretty sure he has to network to get money, especially early on. At this point, he can just probably snap his fingers to get money for a new movie. But when he started, he had to network to get people to have faith to give money for him to make these really big, expensive, awesome movies. Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, some of these people might come up. Sir Isaac Newton, I don't know. Larry Page, Albert Einstein. These are all people who needed to interact. Even if you have this overall desire and you need those moments of time where you're actually alone, which is what makes you an introvert, it does not mean that you can't get up on the stage and deliver a great speech.
Well, it's really interesting because one of the ones there's a Huffington Post article as well. Christina Aguilera is an introvert.
Yeah, and just think if she said, well, I'm an introvert, well, she would have never got on stage. Most musicians make most of their money performing on stage, not making records.
Right.
They make the records to get you to want to come see them.
But it's interesting because, neuroscience is showing us that you can still prefer to be introverted, but learn how to have extrovert skills when you need them.
And sometimes the reason why we're introverts might not just be because we are introverts. It might be because we don't have the social skills to be extroverted. So we just say we're introverts to help protect ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with being introverted, because those people who I just said, I would have Eleanor Roosevelt, Rosa Parks. These are huge people, who
made a difference in the world because they were willing to stand up even though they were introverts.
Yeah.
I don't want you to pigeonhole yourself because you have created this identity of who you are back from when you were, somewhere in your teens or your 20s, and you've decided that this is who you are and it's static. Because we can always learn new skills and reinvent who we are.
Wow. I'm sorry. I have to close this down because
you're going through the list and you can't believe, like Emma Watson is an introvert.
Abraham Lincoln, he was a president. They kind of really have to talk and work with other people.
Yeah.
So once again, an introvert does not mean you cannot. When you cannot, that becomes irrational. And that's maybe a sign of something, once again, you might need help with, or an excuse.
So I kind of want you to think about, when you're having conversations with people, think about how often, when somebody gives you a suggestion or they ask you a question and you start to say, I can't do that, I won't do that, I blame other people, and I think business owners, we sometimes get into the cycle, we blame customers. Well, my customers don't see the value in what I do. Okay, well, I love you all, but then you're doing a really crappy job.
Yes.
Explaining the value of what you do.
You cannot blame people for not either if they don't get it, you're not explaining it right. I mean, that's simple. Can I adjust one thing to get them to understand this better? Do I get a little bit of improvement or a lot? When people don't understand what you do, part of it is, one, they might not need it, and you're just saying they don't want it. And the other part might be you're not explaining it well.
Right. And I think a lot of times, especially when you work in technical fields, people think that you just snap your fingers and things happen with technology.
Yes, it's magic.
Right. So you need to, when you're putting together a proposal, say you're putting together a proposal for a website, don't just say build a website. List out the things that you are going to do. So it is a list of 25 different items, and they go, holy crap, there's a lot to this.
Keep it simple, because they probably don't understand what you do, and don't try and prop yourself up egotistically by using your big industry terms that people might or might not understand. Put it in their terms, simple. I'm going to do this, this, and this for you.
Right. But when you break it down into pieces, then people understand how much work is involved with what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I think that is really helpful.
And then quickly, there's one other thing that we have to kind of talk about. And see, this is an interesting episode where the main content is kind of the short part, because it's a lot of build up to it, but there's this idea in decision making where there's two systems, and scientists have come up with the two coolest possible names for these systems of decision making. System 1 and System 2.
Wow, that's really complicated.
Now, Freud called it the id and ego. Sometimes people call it the mind and body, or your mind and heart. That's what my mom would always say. Your heart and mind just don't agree on something. There's this idea of, we have this sort of instinctual decision-making thing called System 1. And that's beneath the surface. You don't know it's even happening, but it's that thing that makes you go, ice cream, ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. Yay.
I was doing that last night with chocolate cake.
My wife was doing that with chocolate cake, and I believe ice cream at some point too. And your System 2 is what you think of as you. It's this thing that goes, well, we like ice cream, but no, we're not doing that today. And so you go, oh, I want ice cream, but I can't get ice cream today. So you have these two competing things in your mind, and that's probably maybe as humans where we make some bad mistakes in our life. And so the problem is system 2 can train system 1. So when you get perpetually stuck into a stage of burnout, which we're going to go over in a minute, you're training your system 1 to go ice cream, ice cream, ice cream to no one wants me to eat ice cream because they hate me.
Oh my God.
Okay, that might be a bit extreme.
Well,
but
but that's
the idea, though. You over time can train your system 1, and that's how we change our behaviors. That's how we create new habits. That's why they say take 21 days and do something, because you're training your system 1. And the biggest example that we all probably know is driving. When you first started to drive, you sucked at it, and you were scared. You're like, wait, I have to do this, and I have to do that, and I have to do this. And then after 10 years of commuting, you get to work some days, and you're like, oh, I drove?
Mm-hmm. Because your system 1 took over.
Because your system 1 took over and did the entire thing.
Right.
Which is kind of scary, too. You should probably pay more attention than that. I personally would never do that, and neither should you. But so the thing is, understand that you have this subconscious thing that you are actually probably influencing with your conscious thought.
Right. And that's the big problem that you get into when you start getting into the I can't, I won't, you're blaming other people, is that you are teaching your system 1 that this is how you react. So when somebody says, hey, do you want to try this? I can't do that.
Yeah.
I won't do that.
Mm-hmm. And we really hurt ourselves. Just think about, it's like we've all been in parts of our lives where we've needed more money, and then when you're in that point, you're like, I can't save. I can't get a better job. I can't do and I can't cut back my expenses. You're saying I have to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to be there stuck for money your whole life? You need to be able to break through these brain processes to be able to go and move your life forward to get towards your dream, to be able to even start dreaming.
Right. And I think one of the reasons that I've been so successful in my life is that I never let my system 1 believe that I couldn't do anything. And so even when other people said, well, you can't do that, system 1 would go, yes, you can. Mm-hmm. Of course you can. You can do anything.
Yeah.
You can't do everything at the same time, but you can do anything. And that took some training from system 2 to system 1, that you can't do everything at the same time. But my system 1 is trained to believe that I can do anything. Mm-hmm. And that makes a really big difference in my life.
Yeah. So now let's get a bit into what we like to call the 4 stages of burnout. The first one, denial. No, nothing's wrong here. It's all going good.
Well, and the thing is, too, and denial can even be, well, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
It's somebody else's fault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is going to be where the blaming starts.
Mm-hmm. Right. And this is kind of, I think this is where you start to see the blaming, and you also start to see the can'ts, won'ts, shouldn'ts kind of come in. Because, a lot of times, like, well, if just the right people just happen to come through the door,
then they would buy my stuff and everything would be perfect.
Right. Or if I get the right SEO person, it's all going to be fine.
If I can find
not me.
If I can find that new productivity tool, I could be more productive.
Yes. And you're still not sleeping.
That's right. Guilt. And I believe this is probably a bad one for both men and women. For me as a man, it was very much, I'm failing. I'm failing my family. I'm not going to be able to feed my family. I'm a failure as a man. I'm a failure to society. What am I worth?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think a lot of times this manifests for women into, well, I've got to take care of my family, so I'm going to put my business aside. Mm-hmm. I have to take care of this, so my business is going to take, behind 8 other things.
Or I feel guilty because I need to help my friend today, my mom today, all of my children today, my husband today, the neighbor's dog today, and the dog's friend. But I didn't get the things I need to get done for my business today. Now I feel guilty.
So now I'm not going to sleep.
Mm-hmm. To try and make up. and then tomorrow it'll all be better.
Mm-hmm. And then the next one is anger.
Mm.
And this is, nothing is working right. It's my customer's fault. It's my employee's fault. It's my husband's fault. It's my wife's fault. It's my kid's fault.
That's right.
It's everybody's fault. And this typically happens after the guilt stage.
Yeah. This is where in guys, you're like, you know what? I bust my ass for this family. I sit there, I go to work so you and the kids can eat. And I don't have times to do the things I want to. Because you want me to be, the person I am, which is the husband, the part of the family.
Right, because you want me to play with the kids.
That's right.
Wait, that means me being a dad, which I am.
So, you start getting misfires in here too. So, and that's humans. Once again, it's our system 1 and system 2 battling each other. And what happens is sometimes the system 1 will slip out. It's I didn't buy the ice cream at the store today, but when I got home and I found that tub of Ben & Jerry's, goodbye. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing when we get in these moments of guilt, where you probably don't even mean that, because the reason you're married and have kids is because that's part of what you want to be. But you're just frustrated in life and you feel guilty, but you're starting to push it back out into anger.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of, you hit this when the guilt starts to manifest outward, right? And you kind of flip this switch where you say, well, it's not me, it's everybody else, and now I'm going to lash out.
Yeah, and it's probably really, I don't know this for sure, but it's probably your brain trying to protect itself, right? Because if you take on all of the problems in your life, that's a crappy life, because lives have problems. And part of us wants to take them in, and it's easy to feel guilty. But then after a while, your brain starts needing to protect itself because it doesn't want to get worse. So it starts to lash out at other people.
Right. And if you kind of think back to what we talked about from the UCLA list, when you are resentful and you are trying to withdraw, but you have family that is not willing to let you go, that's when you start to lash out in anger, right? So you've got these two things where your body and your mind are trying to protect you, and you're trying to withdraw and you're trying to procrastinate, you're trying to pull back, and your wife just wants you to have dinner with the family and you blow up over it.
Yeah. And it might not even always be external. For me, a lot more it was internal. So I would sit and I would do like something stupid, but I would really lash out, and I would get very angry at myself. I don't think I got angry at you very often, but a lot of times, like, I would drop a glass and I would start cussing up a storm that I would not repeat on this air.
Mm-hmm. Which was really funny because last night you spilt cat food all over the floor and we both laughed over it.
Yeah.
But no, like before, you would have gone on like a 15-minute swearing tirade over the cat food. Mm-hmm. And last night, like, you did it and we just kind of laughed about it and cleaned it up.
Yep.
That is a huge difference for you. And that's the thing. I think you never lashed out at anybody else. But yeah, you were very critical of yourself.
Yeah. And the thing is, this is why I have to worry, because it can manifest in different ways. And what we're saying is, and there are things that are maybe similar that you're hearing that aren't exactly. It's because we're humans. There are lots of different ways we can react. When you're unsure, these are when you seek out help and advice. And, you start trying to make some changes, because what happens is you start getting the guilt and anger, and who knows, maybe you don't really do denial. Maybe you go straight to guilt, or you skip guilt and go straight from denial to anger, because these things change around. It leads us to the sense of hopelessness. And this is where Jeffrey was trapped for years.
Yeah, the fourth stage is hopelessness.
I might not have been hopelessness, but in a way I was, but I used false language. I would say, well, there's no way I can do anything about this today. I can't get closer to my dreams today because I have to work. I have to do these things that I hate for my family. And so I'm blaming them for having to work, because not that I got any benefit from me working. Or benefit, by helping my wife by me working. I got benefits from both of those things. But, it's like I not only start pushing the good stuff onto her, I start pushing the bad stuff to myself. And I say, well, maybe someday, but I'm lying to myself because I don't really believe that. I believe I'll never get to writing and doing the things that I love, getting to help the audience. I love doing this. And it might have been 5 years ago, I couldn't have even started.
Yeah.
I had to start slow, and I started working my way out, and then I hit points, and I would start zooming and zooming.
Right. But then you'd hit stages where you'd go back into burnout again.
Yeah.
So like, it was kind of interesting. So back at the end of 2013, you read Start, right? So I read it and then you read it, and you got really excited about things again. And then after a couple months, you burned out again.
And that's because I tried to go to Dream Life from Burnout in 30 seconds. And the thing is, you zoom and you take advantage of the momentum. But really the thing I find I had to do for myself is I had to increment in changes. One new thing, make sure it's actually effective, and keep working stuff in so I could perform better over a longer period of time, and avoid burnout. But it took me years to be able to figure out how to avoid. I've not burned out in a couple months at this point. So,
and you're doing an incredible amount of work too.
Yes, I'm working harder now. I actually spend less time in Facebook now that I'm at home working, which I kind of should probably be spending more time in Facebook because that's part of the job. But, the thing is, I'm doing more work now than I have in years. And some of it has been real boring, gritty work, which I would have hated to do. But I smile through it now. Because sometimes the gritty work, we're not at a point where we can outsource it. So you know what? If I can get it done with a smile, it gets done a lot faster.
Right. And I think one of the issues with hopelessness, you stop dreaming, you stop thinking about a better life, and you just get stuck.
Yeah.
And when you hit hopelessness and you hit exhaustion at the same time, that's when it gets really dangerous.
And the thing to keep in mind is if you get to hopelessness and you don't even know you're burned out, which, trust me, it's possible. That's, when you're in these 4 stages of burnout and you don't know it, that's when you get trapped there. If you read The Charged Life by Brendon Burchard, these are where you become caged.
You're right. Yeah, and we'll put a link to The Charge in the show notes for this episode. If you have not read that book and you are experiencing any of these pieces, okay, whether it's the physical ones, whether it's the mental ones we're talking about, you need to read this book.
Unless you're 100% sure that you have not suffered these, that you don't have any of these symptoms, and that you have no risk of burnout, don't read the book. But if you do, this is a good place to start.
Yeah, it really is. All right, so how do we escape burnout?
Well, and this is the great thing too, right? And for some of you who've taken psychology in college, you're kind of going denial, guilt, anger, hope. That sounds kind of familiar. That sounds like, oh wait, these are the 7 stages of dealing with grief.
Right.
But we only did 4 because the first 4 stages are all the negative stuff. And they can get trapped in here in anything. This is very old science. Going through grief. But the thing is, we are grieving for something, and it's irrational grief because we're still alive and can do something about it. But we are grieving the fact that we are not the person we want to be.
Right.
But as long as you have breath and blood, you can get there. And so the important thing is, what are these next 3 steps that help us escape, to help us break out of burnout?
Right. And that's the thing, if you've lost a loved one, you probably recognize these stages, right? You deny that it happened. You feel guilty because maybe you didn't spend enough time with them. You're angry that you lost them. You feel hopeless because, you can't get them back. And then these next 3 steps are what helps pull you out. Because
really what will happen at that point when it's working normally is you will recognize the fact of where you're at, and you'll kind of start teetering, and the real lows of the hopelessness will start to edge away.
Right.
And you'll sit there and go, oh, you know what? And then you can start reconstructing and looking for new ways to improve yourself, to get out of it. Like, you know what? I'm taking the kids to the water park, that indoor one, because I live in Connecticut and it's only April.
And it's freezing.
But that's where you start making the changes. So you first you recognize it, then you do some reconstruction on yourself, and then you get back to this area of hope. Because hope is the one thing that keeps humans, and sometimes we're even irrational when we have hope. But you know what? When we lose hope, we have no chance of going forward. As long as we have hope, we'll keep looking for new ways to break through. And once you stop looking for those ways to break through, you are not going to break through.
Yeah. Now, I think you went really quickly over the first two. So recognition is what you're doing listening to this episode, right? You're probably saying, you know what? I'm experiencing some of those energy conservation things. Yeah, I am feeling guilt, or I am feeling anger. Because the thing is, you don't have to go through all 4 stages of burnout to pull yourself back out.
No.
So if you're in the denial stage right now and you recognize that now, you can avoid the rest of it.
Yeah.
But you have to recognize that there is a problem. Okay? And that there is, you have the power to fix it. Because recognition is not just, okay, there's something wrong. It's also, I have the power to fix it.
And we'll always say humans were really good at lying to ourselves. We also, we have the own keys to the kingdom for ourselves. We know what makes us happy.
Exactly.
We know what brings joy to our life. And when we have negative feelings, we need to flip to those positive things in our life so we can constructively move ahead.
Right. So now Reconstruction, this is where the real hard work takes place. This is where, maybe you need to find somebody to talk to, whether it's a religious leader, whether it's a mental health professional, whether it's, you start doing some courses or get a coach. You're doing some work so that you can start reconstructing your mindset. Because without that work, recognition, you're like, yeah, great. I know there's a problem and I can fix it.
But I just don't know how.
But I don't know how.
And if you spend too much time not knowing how, you might start going, no, I can figure this out. And then maybe I can't figure this out. What's wrong with me? And then you get mad. Wait, you notice we're starting the cycle over again? That's where we get trapped.
Right. So that's where you're going to do most of your work. And then creating hope again. And that is through dreaming again. That is through rediscovering your family and your friends. That is, when you it's funny because we did an episode on this last week. I can't tell you how many people I ran into this week. And I say, how you doing? Fine. What's going on? I'm not getting enough sleep. Get sleep. Like, I think it's funny because in my life this week, I think I said about 100 times that sleep is your greatest productivity tool.
And the thing is, once again, and sleep is the greatest example. We all know we need it to be more productive, yet we hold it back from ourselves to get more work done, even though we're starting to get less work done. But, once again, we know the fix.
Right. And that's the thing, like in that reconstruction, that's where you start getting sleep. That's where you start taking care of yourself. That's where, in Small Biz HQ this week, we encouraged our members to develop 3 words regarding the person they want to be. And what does that person look like? That's all part of the reconstruction process.
And then creating triggers. So you'll think about those words, you think about those happy emotions and that those words bring to you. But that's sort of cognitive behavior. You're modifying your behavior. You're teaching yourself a habit over time. you're switching it where now literally during the middle of this episode, and hopefully I cut it out and you couldn't hear, one of my triggers went off for my words, and the first thing I thought was I'm happy. And I was, even though it interrupted us in the making of this episode.
Or before it would have gone off and you would have started swearing.
Oh, and I won't go into it here because there's not an explicit warning big enough for when I go into a cussing time.
There you go. So, what we're asking you to do is we're asking you to avoid the risks. Reflect on your behavior, use affirmations and cognitive behavioral techniques to change your emotional response.
Yeah, because think about this too. If you can create a trigger that makes you like angry into one that makes you happy, how much more productive do you think you can be in your life? Oh yeah. Because when we get frustrated, angry, even when it's a short term, 5, 10, half an hour thing, we don't get a lot else done because you get focused on the negative thoughts, and where it's okay to recognize that you're angry and make changes to prevent it in the future. You don't have to be consumed and spend, long periods of time not getting anything done because of it. And trust me, when you do this work, your family, your your partners or your employees, your customers, they are going to notice it and they are going to comment. Typically we don't like to comment when people are going downhill, but when people start to go uphill, people will notice and they will say things. I know a lot of you guys have contacted us, about seeing Jeff's improvements and, people will let you know. Yeah. Okay. So to kind of sum everything up, we just want you to make sure, we want you to know this happens to all of us. Okay. Burnout is a real thing. It happens to everyone at some point. You need to check in with your mindset regularly. Okay. So, that's part of the triggers that we do with our 3 words is when that trigger goes off or, when that trigger happens, we say, where's my mindset right now? Am I in that, in that place where I want to be? If not, why not? Yeah. Watch the language that you're using. Now, I know a lot of the people out there, just from doing some of the lives and interacting with you in our groups, are journalers. When you have bad days, go back and read through the language that you use. Look for phrases that come up a lot. And here's a bit of homework for you. Write them all down on a piece of paper. And then every night after you journal, look over at that paper and see if those words are represented. And maybe you can catch denial really early on. Maybe you can catch yourself going into that cycle really early on, because if it's like with most everything, the longer it takes for you to identify it, the more of a problem it's going to be. Right. And the harder it is to pull out. So, once, if you've identified that you are in burnout, then you've already started to turn the corner to pull yourself out, because you've already made that recognition that that's where you are. Yeah. And so you're already on the first stage of pulling out. Okay. Do that work. And if you need help, contact us. Yeah. Okay. We love helping small business owners turn that corner and start to love their businesses again. Because really what we ultimately want for all of you is to be in a spot where you can dream again. And you can't really do that in burnout. And when you do it in burnout, it helps feed the cycle. Yeah. So some of you might even know some people who you're going through this. Be understanding, right? Understand that they are in the cycle, and just telling them and that you're in the cycle probably isn't going to help. And you know them more than we do, but just be understanding and try and work with them to help get them in a more positive place, because once they can kind of get there, then they can break out of their own burnout cycle. Right. If you know people who are experiencing this, share this episode with them. If they don't know how to listen to a podcast, show them how. Share this on your social media. I think this episode can help a lot of people. And you guys know that there are people in your lives that are experiencing this. And what I'll do too, because I know some of you, feel awkward telling your friends, how to do it. I'm going to go put a video up today, Sunday, based on the Small Biz Life podcast page. And, you can also pull that up if you're not quite completely comfortable doing it as well, just as a way to be able to go, okay, yeah, here's all the steps, and I'll show you in iTunes how to download it, how to subscribe to podcast, because not only we get our great show, but then they can get other great shows that might make them more happy.
So you're going to put a video on the Small Biz Life page, which is facebook.com/Small Biz Life podcast. And to show people how to listen to a podcast.
Yep. And it'll just be called How to Listen to Podcast.
Okay. All right, cool. That's awesome. All right. So thank you so much for joining us again this week. All the links, including the links to our Facebook group and our Facebook page, will be on smallbizlife.com. Click on podcasts and you will see episode 82. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.
This was Small Biz Life.